Today is Tuesday, September 17th, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 3, Episode 31, Java 23 Release Party. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. Today is a very special day. Today is what I would like to call Java 23 Launch Day!
Woohoo!
I'm actually at a customer. I might have said that a little bit too loud. There's a bunch of developers out there, so that was fun.
Nice.
But yes, today's special. It's exciting. There's nothing quite like waking up and getting this gift from the community like Java 23. What a time to be alive.
Yeah. So if you are joining us here on the live stream, you already know this, but we have a special guest today. Billy, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for joining me on this very special day where we have once again, it's actually not so special anymore. Now since going to the 6 month, but since going to the 6 month release cadence, now it's just, twice a year we're doing this.
Billy, if I had a birthday every 6 months, I would still celebrate it. So I'm here for it.
So actually, funny thing about that, my wife and I, we share each other's half birthdays. So
nice.
So we actually my wife, she just celebrated her birthday last Friday. So, it's always joke. It's like, oh, it's my half birthday for that person.
Yeah. That's awesome. Hey, so for anyone who doesn't know you or was not a part of this special day so far, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am a Java developer advocate with a small company you might have heard of called Oracle. Yeah, I know. Actually, I'm also based in Kansas City along with DaShaun, where we actually also work together to help run the Kansas City Java users group as well.
Nice. Yes. Oh, I was so excited to get that Java user group shout out from Shar.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Very much awesome.
So. Well, we are Midwest, so Midwest is running the show today. So I like it.
Absolutely.
So JDK 23 release party today. You guys had a big stream this morning. DaShaun and I were on it. I just want to say it was really well put together. A lot of great guests. I like how you kind of brought somebody in and they just talked about what they were working on quickly. You got on to the next thing. And I thought that was fun. You kept it like live and you covered a lot. So kudos to you and the whole team for the stream party this morning.
Was there like 50 segments? There was like 50 different segments all bundled in. How long was the stream?
Yeah.
It was 4 hours?
It was just over 3 hours. So I think it was 3 hours and 5 minutes or something like that.
And it was awesome. So people can still go and watch that if they missed it. Here's the thing that I liked about it is that there was a ton of segments every hour and experts from all over the globe answering questions, talking about the new features. And the thing that I was really excited about was in the chat that there was all of the other people that weren't on the Java team or Java engineering. It was like the who's who of the Java ecosystem was all there. Everybody was there. You had to have like 20,000 people on that live stream.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. I've been so happy with kind of how they've gone. A good amount of planning definitely goes into those for sure. But I think one of the great things, and I mean, you guys also have it with the Spring team, is that when we kind of reach out to the engineers, lots of times they're very excited to be a part of it. But like, these are like extremely smart people working on these really cool projects that you've heard of. It's not like, oh, hey, like I know someone who kind of knows Spring Boot pretty well. They've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years. It's like, no, like you guys can go to like Phil Webb, or Sebastian Deleuze, or so many of these people who like, are actively implementing, or for us, like at the end of it, we were talking with John Rose, who's done so much on the JDK thing. And, now we're for one of our Project Light. And, it's just like, it's not like this person kind of knows this thing and he's kind of played around with it. It's like, no, like this is like the dude, like as Josh likes to say, like pushing the bits.
Right. That's one of the things he said. He goes, you add a couple of bytecode to the front of that method. I was like, what? Who does that? What?
Yeah.
But that's one of the things he said. So yeah.
Cool. So we are live streaming this. So thank you for everyone who is joining us here on YouTube or across some different platforms. If you are not joining us on the live stream, maybe you're catching this on a replay, you can go ahead and watch the replay on YouTube. You can also go ahead and get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And again, I just want to mention that live stream that we are referring to. There is a replay of that, so go check that out if you missed that this morning. Definitely worth your time. If you are joining us in the live stream, please do us a favor and get your questions in. We'll see if we can't get them answered. But today we're talking all about JDK 23, some of the things that are included, what we're excited about, and then tomorrow we get to start working on JDK 24. So
exactly.
Oh, wait, go
ahead.
Is the early access release for 24 already out?
Yeah. I think actually we even usually once we start going into ramp down phase. So the release process, like we have it every 6 months, but I believe it's about 3 months before the release, or maybe 2 months. Something like I'll double check on it. We enter what's called ramp down phase 1, and at that point, that is when that release is branched off from main. And I think, within like a few weeks, then we already start publishing EA builds for the following release then. So like we've already had 24 EA for some time now. Yeah, it's pretty.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it was the last release party where I think it was the day of or the week after. You're like, well, why aren't you using the 23 early access? And I looked
exactly.
I had the 20. Yeah, of course I'm going to use the early access.
Well, speaking of, if you want to start playing with JDK 23, it is out. You can get it. Yep. Now, I usually keep looking at SDK Man for a release. It's not there yet. At least it was not like 35 minutes ago. But if you are in IntelliJ, you can go in and start a new project, and you can actually pull it right down from there. Obviously, you can get the bits from Oracle as well. But there are ways to get it right now, the actual JDK 23, and start using it. So I created a new project in IntelliJ, downloaded JDK 23, and I was able to like start playing around with some stuff. I mean, this is not the first time I played with the early access stuff, but it was nice to see it. Like we're talking about it all day, and I was able to open up an IDE and start playing around with it. So
fantastic. Yeah, I believe it was.
Doesn't it feel like it's a present? It's a gift.
Yeah.
Like
it is
a new toy to open and play with.
It is. One thing I want to point out too is I think we saw some questions in the release party today, like when is Spring going to support it? So as soon as the next version of Spring that is able to support it, it'll show up on Spring Initializer. I don't want to put a date on it, but it's probably later this week, early next week. So be on the lookout for that. Start.spring.io. Again, get those questions in. I see there's a question in there. So I do want to just kind of address this. Sir, I am a junior Java developer. Is it worth it to stick with Java or move to data science? So it depends what your question around of, what is it to stick with it? Like, is it worth it? For me, this is all about what you're interested in. So like you have to follow what you're interested in. If you're really interested in data science, then follow that. But if you're just interested in software development, programming in general, obviously Java is something you can stick with. It's been around for 28 years now, 28. And 29. It is used 29, and it's used in enterprises everywhere. It's always at the top of like the most popular programming languages out there. So you're probably asking the wrong group, but yes, we would say Java is definitely worth sticking to. So
I think, I think actually one thing I like to bring up there, because, we do hear this from the community a lot that, concerns about making sure that the next generation of developers, for all of us here in the stream, I think we've all been in Java for 10 plus years. Some of us, getting closer to that 20 plus years now. So, you might think that the perspective of junior developers, isn't quite as important. Like, I'm well into my career. Who care? It doesn't matter as much, what it is like for people just entering Java or just thinking about getting into programming at all. And at least that's, one thing that we talked a bit about during our live stream. And I think we're going to be talking about more about in the future as well, is the Java and education perspective. Because the only way for Java to be sustaining in the long term is to make sure that that pipeline of new Java developers is continuing. And so, that's some of the things we're doing with, I believe it's JEP 477, where
it is.
The public static are improving the learning process. Because I don't literally just say this, but I do remember at one point. So like when I was at IBM, before at Oracle, I had a similar role at IBM, and when we first entered the lockdown phase, I think I started to try to write a series of blog articles about like pushing code to Kubernetes. And like one of the things I wanted to do, one of my frustrations with Kubernetes documentation is like it would say like, oh, if you want to set up like a load balancer, like it would just show you like those 2 lines of YAML, like this is how you set up a load balancer, but it shows you no context about where it's supposed to go or something. I was always so frustrated. And I was also kind of thinking then it's like, okay, if I was talking to like a completely new Java developer about Hello World, like how would I explain it to them to where they would actually understand everything that's happening in that, that 4 or 5 lines of code, because there's a lot of stuff going on. And during that live stream, Gavin goes through it really well. He's one of our language people, where, like we're talking about accessibility with public and classes and, static versus instance methods. I mean, there's a lot of concepts going on there. Now, like in presentations, like when I bring this up, like sometimes teachers, understandably express concern about going through this change. And like it kind of explains like, oh, okay, teachers are very smart. Like, one teacher kind of talked about how they do things comparatively. Like, you write out public static void or hello world. And then like with your teachers or your students, it didn't be like, okay, we're going to change this line. And then that's how you kind of build it up. You do it comparatively. And obviously that's how many people got started. That's how I got started. And then later on, you kind of go back through and go all that stuff. But it would be kind of nice if instead of trying to tell students to like, hey, ignore all this stuff right now, we're just going to focus on this part of the program, but to actually being able to always go through the entire thing and then slowly introduce stuff, I think is going to be making for a much better thing. I think it's going to be one of those things where like early on, I know there was like a lot of concern and pushback when it came to the 6-month release cadence, but I think the community has really enjoyed it and bought in. I think that's something we should also talk about a little bit later, because I think you guys have a better perspective on that. But I think it's also going to be something that, like right now, I understand like some of the concern, and we still want to hear feedback. It's not like just accept it and don't question it. By all means, give us feedback and how can we improve it or take it in a different direction. But I think it's also something that whenever we do kind of have something released on that, 10 years from now, it's going to probably be a very like glad that we made that change, that it's probably going to probably really help with the education aspect.
Absolutely.
We heard a bunch of echoes and pointers to how the whole Java community works, how the JEP works. And that was wonderful to hear, like, hey, it's not just me, it's not just Gavin, it's not just John or whoever. It was, this is how the community drives. The other cool thing to hear was the decisions for changes that happened in Java 23 are made to affect Java 25, 27 and beyond. It's a kind of step by step. We're building towards something bigger and better. And one of the other things, the data modeling, data centric approach. We've heard echoes of this for a while, and now it's really, we're starting to hear a lot more of it. Why these changes matter to the Java ecosystem, and they're going to keep on coming. Like the world's not going to slow down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat, so if you're interested in kind of checking this out, we'll share our screen in a little bit, but this is where all of the JEPs for JDK 23 are. You can see if it's something that's been released or if it's in a preview, and this is kind of where we'll be looking at. But you touched on one that's probably one of my favorites that's in now a third preview, which is implicitly declared classes and instance main methods. And so if you've ever seen the whole, I got to have a class, I got to have a public static void main, what is this string args? What is this system.out.println? We get rid of all that ceremony, and we can kind of just throw somebody who's new to Java into a file, have them start writing. But I think somebody mentioned this today too. It's not just for newbies, right? It's not just for someone new to Java. It's, hey, I want to hack something together real quick, and I don't need all this ceremony to do that. And so I'm really excited about that. I think one thing that made it a little bit better for me was another one that went into preview today, which was the module import declarations. So by default, when you create this, you are importing java.base, right? You import this module. So now you don't need to say system.out.println. You can just say println. And for me, that was one of the arguments I heard from the community too. Like, if we're trying to make it easier, I don't want to write that out. I just want to write println. Every other language out there has an easy way to like print something to the console. So looking at that void main with just a println now is like, that is so nice to see.
And actually one other really nice change with that is also so like printing out something to the console in Java is, pretty, like even right now, it's just out println, it's pretty easy just to write that out. Reading from console though is just unreasonably painful right now. And so actually also with that change is we added a new method for just read line that's also automatically imported for those kind of implicitly declared classes that you can just do, read line and then read in from console. And of course, if you're going to actually start just so we all, with implicitly declared classes is like you open up a code file and you just type out like public void main or just void main even, and that's it. And there's no enclosing class. Then that creates like what's called an implicitly declared class. So then when you do Java run on it, the JVM will automatically kind of create a compiler or create a class around it. So, and in those cases, will automatically import exactly what you talk about, like the system out print line. So you can just do print line or this read line. It will be automatically imported along with everything from Java base. Now, if you did write a class around it, you would then have to go back to doing your normal imports. But like that read line, you can just do a static import of Java IO, and you would get that read line in with it as well.
And if you type, I did this when I did this example earlier, but if you type import module java.base, it's kind of grayed out, kind of telling you that that's already been implicitly imported.
Yeah.
But for those of you new to this, that'll give you the ability to just kind of click on that module and see what's kind of being exported out of that module. So that's a good thing. And as you said, as somebody who's new to the language, I don't want all that ceremony. The things that I'm doing in intro computer courses are reading things in and printing things out. So give me all of those things right away so I don't have to worry about it. And we could always come back later and talk about how that actually works. But let's, I like getting quick wins, especially in the class.
Yeah.
Like, let me get
absolutely.
something done and then we'll figure out how it actually happened later.
Billy, this is a question. I'm pretty sure that you're the person to answer this from Abdalila. I'm a beginner in Java. Is there a difference between OpenJDK and Oracle JDK?
Yes. So I'll go with definitely like the simple answer and then get a little bit more of a complex answer. So yeah, there is the various builds of OpenJDK. So like we have like our JDK GitHub page, OpenJDK GitHub repo. And like, the OpenJDK is code directly built off of that repo. And like, there's an Oracle OpenJDK for that. And like a bunch of other vendors also, like there's, I guess, AdoptDM, like they will all kind of build the code directly off of their page on their own hardware and then provide those binaries out. And then there's Oracle JDK. And it's almost exactly the same. There are a few little differences where like if you do Java dash version, it will say like Oracle JDK and there's like a little bit licensing differences. But, once you get 3 years out from so JDK 23 doesn't have long-term support with it. So that's a vendor thing. So Oracle can provide long-term support for it. Others, Amazon, Microsoft, they could all provide long-term. If they wanted to, they could provide long-term support for 23, but they're not going to. But like in 25, that's going to be the next release with long-term support provided for it. But difference as far as like a user between OpenJDK and Oracle JDK be pretty much exactly the same. It's just once you get 3 years out from that, that's usually when that free access to update ends, and where you would need to probably typically have a support contract to continue getting security updates. Which again, if you're new to a Java developer, if you're a student, that doesn't make any difference because you're just writing applications for your local machine or whatever. You're not too worried about security stuff, but for organizations, you would care. There are a couple other small differences. So actually something here with JDK 23, now Oracle JDK will have access to the Graal JVM JIT as well. That's about like the only, I guess, functional difference right now between OpenJDK and Oracle JDK. The slightly longer answer to that then is that actually like OpenJDK is kind of like the organizational structure that handles the development of JDK. It's just like a place, I guess you could say, versus like an actual specific binary. But yeah.
And I know DaShaun and I talk about this a lot, but if you go out and use a tool like SDK Man and you say SDK list Java, whoa, there is a ton of options there. Like, which option do I choose? As you said, just working on your local machine, you can kind of go whatever way you want. But as DaShaun, you say a lot, there are different flavors for different types of things you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, my favorite thing is like the Java JVMs are one size fits most, but at a certain scale, the different performance benefits, the different contracts and licensing, they make a big difference. So yeah, the JVMs are one size fits most, but it's up to us as developers to experiment and to find the one that fits best for our workload.
One quick question here. You guys aren't hearing any like noise or anything over my microphone sound, right?
Nope.
Okay, I just had to turn on a fan just because it's getting a bit warm. As DaShaun and Dan, still quite warm here.
Yes.
The middle of
we're holding on to summer, and rightfully so. I don't want to let it go yet. Here's a comment from Ivan. After nearly 25 years of programming with Java, I'm still very excited about everything that's going on lately. Great job. I agree. Doesn't get old. And, we talk about this a lot, and I know I've heard you talk about this a lot, Billy. really that release cadence change after JDK 8, after Java 8, has really kind of put some life back into the community as a whole. Like just being able to like talk about new features every 6 months and not wait for 3 or 4 years. And it's really that iterative process of let's put something out in preview and let's get it in the hands of developers right away, so we can get a feedback on it and find out what we're doing right or what we need to change. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's been an extremely important change on multiple levels. Like, I think one thing, and again, it was a bit controversial at the time when we proposed it, but I think it's been really borne out. That's kind of when I was talking about with like the changes to public static void main, is that, you know, again, going to 6 months was a bit a concern. People are going to be like, how are we going to support all these different versions? Which I totally understand. You know, obviously you on the Spring team understand that concern of like, you know, how can we support all these potentially different versions? But I think, you know, it's been borne out that this has been very beneficial, because like now you have the reliability that it's the third Tuesday on September or March is when like the next version of the JDK is coming in. So all of like the downstream, you know, our library partners, they can all depend upon that. And of course, also enterprises can depend upon that. And I think what we've also seen then is a much more rapid adoption of their latest release. Like you said, for Spring and Spring Boot, you know, within a couple of weeks here, you're going to be able to go to Spring Initializer and you're going to be able to select JDK 23. Whereas, you know, before the old release cadence, where it was about roughly every 3 years, but there was no guarantee. It was kind of, it was ready when it was ready, which, you know, that's fine if you're talking about like releasing a video game. But when you're talking about releasing a platform that enterprises and a bunch of people depend upon, having that it's ready when it's ready means that then, you know, the Spring team, they can't really start building their code. You know, you can't start building libraries and updating libraries until you really know what's going to be in that release. You know, IntelliJ and Maven and Gradle, they can't really start updating their code and their tools and their libraries until they know what's going to be in it. Because if they said like, oh, okay, like, so back when JDK 9 was being released, that was kind of right when I was getting first started presenting. It's like a big presentation I had coming up was actually at Spring Days. If you guys, I don't know if you guys remember that back in about 2017. For me, that was like one of my first really big presentations, and I was doing it on what's new in JDK 9. So I guess you could kind of see where my career is heading from that point. But I remember I was on vacation, and while I was on vacation, this was like about like 6 weeks before I was supposed to give this presentation, like there was this catastrophe happening whether or not the module system or Java modules was going to make it into JDK 9. There was like, wait, we're going to take it out, whatever. It was just chaos. And like for me, for my presentation, you know, this is a very small thing, but it's just like, that was going to be the central thing in my presentation, because that was a big thing in JDK 9. So I was just like, what am I going to do at the presentation? I'm supposed to be taking up an hour, and now it's going to be about 15 minutes if this gets taken out. But, you know, of course, obviously for, you know, like Maven or Gradle or any of these things that are dependent upon, you know, JDK 9, like how can you know what you're going to do, whether or not like a central feature like that is going to be in there or not? So I think that's one of the nice things, is that we have that 6-month release cadence, is that you have a much better idea of what's coming in, when it's going to be released, what's going to be kind of in there. And if something kind of misses it, you know, it can be in the next one later on. But and we maybe talk about it a little bit later more with the preview feature stuff. Sometimes we do take some stuff out as well.
But here's the thing. Go ahead, Dan.
No, you go ahead.
I was thinking, like, can you imagine what things would be like if it were a wait, like if we were doing the waterfall approach? Think of, you mentioned Maven, Gradle, Spring. Like if they weren't able to make any progress until today with Java 23, like how long would it take to get support? Right. And one of the things that's really, really cool about this workflow is that we already have early access for Java 24. If not today, then real soon. Like we have access. So all of those teams and others that are doing important bits for all the important things have access to this, and then they can provide feedback, because it is an open community. So they're providing feedback to all the people that we listened to earlier today, so that we can have a better Java going forward. it's just great.
Billy, I love your story because one of the things that I have been kind of pressing this year and kind of highlighting to everyone when I'm giving presentations everywhere is this kind of notion that you do not need permission to advocate for the things that you're passionate about. So clearly at IBM, you're talking about Java, you're very passionate about it. And look where it led you. You're a Java developer at Oracle. So
exactly.
And I don't know that if that was ever your plan or not, but you're probably just out there talking about things that you're passionate about, and look where things kind of led. So I love that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really kind of got the passion from your colleague Josh Long.
Yeah.
I kind of first met him back in 2014 or 2015, something like that. And I met him a few more times. I'm like, wow, this, his life seems so interesting. He's going to fly all around the world and stuff. And I got a bit of a taste of that back in 2019. So that's I joined IBM in late 2018, and then 2019 I got that full experience before COVID happened. It's fun. It can be exhausting living out of a suitcase. So I'm sure you guys also have some experience with. But yeah,
it's not all like Josh. Like we all don't work and experience like Josh.
No,
but it's still fun.
There is only one Josh.
That's true. I just want to say hi to Todd Libby, who's joining us today, who is learning Java at the moment. I know he's going through a bunch of stuff, and he said, so all we have to do is do a print line now. I may have to have a celebration. Exactly. Make sure you get JDK 23 and give that a try. One of the things you mentioned that we heard about in the stream today was string templates. So this has been one of those things that has been in preview. I believe there are 2 previews. This would have been the third.
Yes,
but
2 previews. Yeah, it's
basically been removed and it's no longer there. Can you kind of tell us what's going on with string templates?
What happened?
Yeah, so there was 2 parts to it as to why it was withdrawn. So there's the first part is there was a lot of concerns about like the API, like how Java developers were going to interact with it, the usage and all that aspects. Certainly we heard a lot of feedback when it came to the fact that we were going to go with a backslash backslash. Yeah, I got this wrong on my video earlier today, but the backslash curly brace. Yep. There was a lot of concerns about that because a lot of developers are used to the $ curly brace. So like there was that, and there's other concerns also when it came to some of the API aspect of it. Did you sorry, it hasn't?
No, I want to back up to that because I too, when I first saw that syntax, probably responded the same way that everybody did. It was like, oh my God, that is the ugliest thing ever. I'm never going to use it. But then I heard Brian Getz talk about this and explain why it was what it was. Yeah. And it made total sense to me. Like, you don't have to worry about like backwards compatibility now. Like we're not overwriting something that would have been there in the language beforehand. We know that there's another programming language. Is it iOS or one of the programming languages out there use the same syntax? I don't see people complaining about that there. So once I heard the explanation from him, I was like talked off the ledge, and I was like, "Oh, this actually makes a lot of sense." So,
thank you, Ted.
I had no problem after that.
I was like, okay,
and at least to kind of complete the with what Dan, you were talking about, is the reason why we were choosing that. And I don't know, like that might still ultimately remain whenever we reintroduce the JEP, and I'll get to that also in a moment. But it's because backslash curly brace was invalid in a string. So like if you just had a backslash and a curly brace by itself in a string, like that would give you a compiler error. So that is a way we knew that when we introduced that feature, we weren't going to accidentally have people break a lot of code or something. And it was a way then for the compiler to know this is a normal string and then this is a string template. So there were some concerns about that. And also we also had like this, what's called like the templating syntax, where, so like we would start it off with like str or sql dot, and then like you would have your string template. And it was like a way of processing the syntax, because like if you're doing like you're using a string template with like a SQL query, obviously the biggest concern with that is SQL injection. Someone inserts old Johnny drop tables and now you lost our data. Or probably the bigger concern is somehow they get all the data out of your system, or some large amount of it. That's I think between losing your data or having it leak, I think most organizations would choose losing it because usually you have hopefully have backups. But so there was that, and I think there was some concerns about the API around that, like the experience of working with that. But then internally, we were doing some performance testing, and I think we were finding some of the performance was like it was doing too much work or something for what it was, what we were aiming for it to do. And I think that was concerned. And I think this is also what I like about, again, the 6-month release cycle, and then also this preview feature is if you talk to particularly, well, I think any of the JDK engineers, but particularly some of the longer term JDK engineers, is like one of the great regrets within Java is the serialization API. And if you're all particularly familiar with the serialization API, like it's like one of the biggest things that holds back Java, because normally when you're creating Java and when you're program, like you do like new, like you have like your customer class. And if you want to create a new customer, you do like new customer, and you have like maybe your constructor for it where you pass in a bunch of values, and then like you validate, like, okay, like, you have to have like a ID, or like your ID is automatically generated, and you have like a first name and a last name. But like middle name is optional, but like you have to have like a first name and a last name. So you check to make sure that, there's values there. Like it's not just an empty string, or it's not just a string full of space. Like, so you have like a bunch of this invariant checking. So that's like the normal way you work with it. And you'd be like, okay, yeah. So if that is a way it was set up, then within the code, like you can never have like null for like first name and null for last name, because like the only way supposedly you would think you could create that is with a constructor. Not true, because with serialization, how serialization works in Java, where you send like bits over the wire or something, is when it's being recreated by that other JVM, is instead of creating like this customer example from I was just kind of mentioning earlier, is like you don't actually recreate that customer by calling that customer constructor and all that. You first just like set up like a empty object, and then the JVM like calls like all these like 8 or so magic methods to kind of like populate it. And then at the very end, it's like, oh, and yes, by the way, this is customer. But then obviously, because it's no longer going through that constructor, it's not being checked to make sure that like first name and last name is null. So you could have like a customer with like a null fields or things that couldn't be possible, or like a negative date or negative age and stuff like that. So, and that just causes so many problems all over the code, so many different other areas where, the null safety, it makes it difficult to implement that. So, and where I'm getting with all of that is that it's much better. Like I'm sad that we withdrew string templates, but much better to withdraw it now than to just be like, forget it, we're going to push it out there. Or, or if we're going back to the old release cadence, it's going to be 3 years before we get it out there. So it's like, forget it, we'll just put it out there now. Now it's like, okay, I don't know when we're going to re-preview it. It's coming back though. It's like, it's 100% coming back in some way. It's not gone forever.
Here first. It's coming back.
It's hasta luego, not adios. And
nice.
But that API, but we're not going to be held back by that API in the future because of some design decisions that we're just forcing out there. So that's the real benefit to the community as well.
Yeah, and I mean it's so important, and we got to get it right. Like, why push something out there and then have regrets about it that you can't change? Because Java prides itself on being backwards compatible. Like, we don't want something out there that we're gonna have to like re-implement later on. So I love that. Yeah. And I saw a bunch of not a bunch. I saw a couple complaints of, the Twitter trolls saying, "Oh, now I got to rip all this code out of my," and I'm like, This is a preview feature. You're meant to like use it and give feedback. This isn't deploying to production features. As we heard today in the stream, preview features and deprecated features. We shouldn't be using these in production. So
yeah. And what was it? Oh, so and also one thing to keep in mind is that there is a community, I think I mentioned earlier, of about 10 million Java developers, which then just kind of means that like any weird or odd use case or something like that is going to happen. When you get to those big numbers, just be like, oh, well, no one would ever try to do it like that. It's like, no, absolutely. That is
hi, my name is Florida Man. Hi, my name is no one ever. Like,
yeah, exactly. So we have a huge community out there. So any weird use case will come up. So we both have to address it, and then also like the second we make that public and make it final, that means a lot of people are going to be using it, and then we're kind of bound forever because then someone somewhere is using it.
I wanted to mention too, DaShaun mentioned it earlier, but Shar and Jim did a really good job of kind of highlighting the community. So if you missed the stream this morning, go watch the replay. I thoroughly enjoyed that. We have a bunch of questions here. Should we get to some of these?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's get to the community.
Is it worth to learn Java in the era of AI?
Yes.
So DaShaun and I talk about this a lot. Yes. Absolutely. Because gone are the times of like machine learning, deep learning, training these huge large language models, right? There are two sides of this. There's that side of things, but now we're all on the consumer side of this, right? We are all now consumers of these large language models like OpenAI's GPT or Anthropic's Claude. We are consumers. And at the end of the day, there are some great libraries out there, including obviously Spring AI. There's LangChain for J out there. There are great projects in the Java community to consume these large language models. So absolutely,
that are trained on
great time to be a Java developer.
They're already trained, and all you have to do is access it. It's like a massive database that all you have to do is access. It's already populated for you. It has all the stuff, batteries included. And yes, this is the time you should learn Java. Yeah, it's nice. You'll love it.
And excellent points. Like that is one of the big benefits with Java is like all the API library support. Like, that's like one thing that Java really has over every other language. However, I will kind of disagree with you that, even though we do have like these big AI models between like OpenAI, ChatGPT and Llama and and all of them, chances are we're still at the very beginning of this AI story. And so like right now, Java isn't well situated for writing these AI models out because of like our concurrency isn't just super great right now. And also like our memory model isn't so great, but we have 3 major projects right now that are really trying to address a lot of those concerns. So by far the one that has like the biggest interest is
Panama.
Valhalla. Panama. Yeah, but Valhalla,
both of them.
Is like, all of them. Valhalla definitely has like the greatest interest because this is a project that's been like a decade, literally in the making. But that is going to address it because like right now, like famously or infamously, everything in Java is a pointer. So like, and so that creates like a lot of memory overhead. And there might be a case where you don't necessarily need all the stuff that comes with having a pointer or a reference because there's the memory address and identity and all that stuff. So Project Valhalla is seeking to kind of address a lot of that stuff to where you wouldn't necessarily need to have all that overhead with it. So that's like reducing the memory head, because that's obviously very important when training an AI model, you're going to be dealing with a lot of memory points. And so if you have like a bunch of memory overhead on all those points, then that just doesn't become practical. So that's one of them. The second one, as you mentioned, is Project Panama, and that is about better bridging the divide between the JVM and then native libraries, because obviously that's also going to be another very important feature when writing AI models, is that you need to do like image recognition or taking in something else like that, and you're working with a native library for that. So improving the ability to communicate there is obviously also very important. And then the last one is Project Babylon. And that is about better interfacing between the JVM and GPUs, which, you know, NVIDIA, I can't remember if they're still the most valuable company, but at least I think they were at one point the most valuable.
They're up there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's all because, you know, of their great GPUs.
Yeah, and it's those graphics card power like video games, but it's not video games that made them a billion-dollar company. It's AI.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so those are all well in the works. So Panama is definitely already delivering stuff, and like the vector API is another big thing coming from that. So, you know, but here again. But yeah, here in a few years, you know, Java might be also a very practical tool for not just consuming those existing API or AI models, but actually for natively writing AI model generation as well.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, very much.
I hadn't.
Also on our YouTube channel, my colleague Nikolai actually had a really great video about that a couple months ago.
About what?
I saw that. Yep.
AI. It's kind of like all they just talked about. So like, you know, he'll go into much more depth and not just kind of speaking off the cuff a little bit from here, but it kind of gives a little bit more detail on kind of all what I was just talking about.
Cool. Another question here: how to cope with rapid enhancements in Java at times when enterprises are still not comfortable with Java 8. I saw somebody in the live stream earlier say like "Long live Java 8," and it's just I had to pull out the line: "Friends don't let friends use Java 8."
Exactly.
We don't do that. And we get it. There are enterprises out there that are stuck on JDK 8 because it just works. We don't want to invest the time in it. And, you know, DaShaun and I deal with this every day. You know, this is what we are constantly working with customers on. And it's like, you need to invest the time to upgrade now. And you need to do that because it's not just a one-time thing. We talked about it today. Like Java is getting a new version every 6 months. So invest the time in learning how to make this upgrade process and make it repeatable, so that when the next version comes out, you can just move to that.
Facts, 100%.
Yeah. And DaShaun goes around. There are some great tools out there, DaShaun, that I know you're talking to customers about.
100%. Like it's just it's that time. It's almost irresponsible not to be updating things. Like it's
and you don't need to be on JDK 23 today. Just have a plan to get there at some point.
And I think you guys also just spring, just because like you're by far the most popular as far as like, you know, real framework that developers are actively, or Java developers are actively engaged with. You know, there's probably like something below like Byte Buddy or Jackson, which might be actually used in more languages, but usually you're not directly interacting with it. But you guys also have that experience of like, you have to be backwards compatible or also supporting a bunch of different versions. Like you guys particularly also know that pain that, you know, perhaps a lot of other people may not be quite as familiar with. And it's difficult because, I mean, when I go and do like you guys also do JUG presentations and stuff like that, I mean, I do hear from people who are even on like versions before Java 8, and sometimes it's difficult. It's always libraries. It's always some, you know, they depend upon some weird library for some business critical feature. Obviously, business critical, otherwise it's, you know, move past it, that, you know, is not supported. It's not been updated because no one else. And you know, obviously that opens you up to a lot of security vulnerabilities. Just because also it's just one of those things, like even though like Oracle and many of the other vendors will be more than happy to take it or give you a huge support contract to continue to support whatever version of the JDK you want, there's certain fundamental limits to how much they could secure it. You know, I was talking about serialization earlier because there's also a huge amount of security vulnerabilities with serialization. And if you look at our JEPs, like we've added like serialization filters, but that's only like in certain newer versions that's available that can prevent certain security issues from serialization. So like even if you do have like somehow like a fully patched version of JDK 6, like you wouldn't have that serialization filter. So you would still have potential, some of these security holes from serialization in there. So like that is also why like there's a lot of reasons, but like that's probably the biggest reasons for any enterprise is to making sure that they're secure.
I just looked at the SDK, SDK man list Java, and I noticed there are the Java 1.8 build 422.
Yeah.
422.
Wow.
That's amazing.
There's been a lot of them.
There's been a lot. That's amazing.
Cool. So some other things from JDK 23 that were kind of announced. One thing that's final that I'm really excited about is Markdown documentation comments. So can we talk about this a little? What is this? Why did we make the move to Markdown? I think this is a great feature. I'm excited about it, but be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah. So just also to always be clear is that Markdown is optional. Of course, if all your existing Java documentation is not only still valid, but it will be actively supported for the foreseeable future, and not just because we want to be nice to all the existing Java developers.
You want to be nice to you too. Like somebody asked, somebody asked, is everybody going to be rewriting the JDK? And they're like, no, there's no need for that. There's no need to go do that.
Yeah. Well, then there's also some cases where there's like some Java doc that's like within our own code where Markdown doesn't actually work well for. It's like we just even need to support it just for our own case. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think this is a very nice change. Because so like JavaDoc, you know, like all the prettiness and the markup is all done through HTML. And of course, obviously, if you were to, you know, on your screen right now, right click and inspect, you know, like you would see that this page is just chaos of HTML. And, you know, it's because it's like, you know, div, you know, class, whatever, like, you know, HTML is, you know, based on like XML, and that's just there's a lot of verboseness, you know, of course, is something that often I critique of Java itself. So, and the problem with that then it's not the fact that, oh, okay, you're writing out some Java doc and it takes a bit longer to write it out because you have to write all the opening and closing tags. Yeah, that's annoying. It's for all the future developers that are going to looking at your code, and it's just so distracting to look at that when you're in the when you're in your IDE, which is of course where a lot of times people will be consuming
a lot.
Java doc. You're looking at this method and you want to look at the Java doc, and it's just like, what the hell? And so like sometimes luckily
extra ceremony, yeah,
exactly. And luckily, you know, a lot of modern IDEs, IntelliJ, I'm still one of the heathens that's still actively using Eclipse. You know, then I'll just like I'll just hover over the method name, and then you'll get the rendering, the HTML rendering of it, and then it's, you know, somewhat readable. But it would be much nicer if I could just scroll up and just read the Java doc correctly. That way, it's not like in like a little box I had to kind of like scroll up and down, and so Markdown is a lot cleaner with that, obviously, than what is possible HTML. So that's ultimately why that addition was done, was to make it that much easier for reading documentation in your IDE.
I love it. And I saw somebody was complaining on the again, people will complain about everything. You can give them $100,000 in a dirty paper bag and they'll complain about the dirty paper bag. But
exactly,
it is what it is, right? But somebody said like, oh, well, what if people are new to like programming? This is like an extra learning curve for them. And as you said, one, you can still use HTML, but two, I gotta imagine if you're new to programming, you're using things like GitHub that support Markdown. So probably at this point, you've had some kind of exposure to Markdown. But again, for anybody out there, if you want to use HTML still, you can. Just another way to one thing I saw somebody say, encourage documentation, which I like. Like we need to encourage it. If they're, you know, Cora always says it's on our team, make the right thing to do, the easy thing to do. And if it's easy to write documentation because we're used to writing Markdown, then I think it helps people kind of move towards that and actually do that. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I think one other thing, let me see, JDK Java doc. Let me get the one moment. It's okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I think it's already. Okay, perfect. So also, the Java doc team, they've been doing a lot of improvement because, like, I think someone was talking about Java 8, Java 8 string. Let's just see if I can. Well, whatever. It's fine. So, like, a lot of people, people are mentioning Java 8. So, like, this might be their most recent experience with JavaDoc. And, it's fine. Like, it explains everything that's going on. I mean, there's, and one of the things that also, like, the JDK engineers pride themselves on is providing really great documentation. And really, the JavaDoc is absolutely fantastic for this. But there's been so many improvements to JavaDoc in the years since JDK 8. So, like, here, just with this release, we now have this table of contents to where you can just quickly get down to
I love that.
all the different methods. And also, so, like, you can do so equals, like, this also will filter it down as well.
Nice.
And also this can show you, like, where you are within the JDK up here as well, this breadcrumb. And of course, obviously that could be distracting, so you can close it down. If you want to get to hash map, we now have, like, a much nicer searching as well. So, and I bring this up not because, like, this is great. So if you want to figure out what's, like, the documentation for the JDK, obviously you can go here and view that. All these features are also available to you as a Java developer. Like, I think it's something that is so often overlooked because, every enterprise, obviously you're depending upon all of your libraries like Spring and all that stuff, but you're also going to have your own common utils library or whatever it might be, and probably a bunch of those different libraries, that the customer processing service library. And I think it's something that's so overlooked as to how you could do all this Java documentation and then publish this. And, of course, the Java doc obviously is existing concurrently in that code. So, it's easier to update for the developers maintaining that library. As opposed to it's in the wiki, which is in that black hole of information where just you put that page out there and then no one ever goes to look at it. Or maybe the only person that goes to look at it is you, but no one can ever remember where to find it. It's so nice. There's so many great other features. We have, like, a bunch of other, like, I think help, like, where you can also create, like, system properties pages. So if there's, like, certain properties or whatever, you can put that in there. That can provide some of that additional meta information to kind of explain what is happening as well within the application that isn't something that's imminently obvious through the API. So definitely try to make sure to take advantage of that. And it's even easier now that you can also write down in Markdown.
One of the things that I've been saying for a long time is that your documentation, because we're in this age of AI, your documentation is now more important than ever. So, like, thank you for all the documentation improvements. That's going to make it easier to train the models and for them to give me the right answer when I'm seeking for something.
Exactly.
I got a comment here that said basically a cheat sheet of Java versions features diff would be helpful. I don't know about a diff, but what I am showing, actually, let me remove yours.
Actually, if you do one thing I want to quickly show, if you could go back to my screen. So one thing that is also very nice that has been added, and again, something you can also do with your own code if you're updating versions within your library, is there's also this feature where, okay, so
I like that.
You're upgrading from Java 11 to 17, and you want to see all the API updates between them. You can just uncheck, all these boxes, and you can see, like, oh, yep, that's all the API that has changed between them.
That's
there it is.
Cool.
There's also this as well for deprecation. Yep.
Nice.
That's amazing.
That is really good. The only thing I
Go
was
ahead.
going to
Yeah.
the only thing I was going to show off was if people weren't aware, we put this link in earlier, but if you go to OpenJDK and you go to JDK 23, this shows you basically what's in JDK 23. So here are all the features. Every one of these has a JEP. So this is the JDK enhancement proposal. There's a number and then what it is. And if you've never had a chance to like go through these, they put so much time and effort into these. Like it's not just a code block saying here's what it looks like. Like there is motivation, what's included, what's not included, like why did we do this? So if you're ever interested in a feature, that is a really good place to start.
Yeah, there's also the Java Almanac, which also has that also provides a kind of certain different level of abstraction as well for kind of comparing the diffs between the versions. That's something that is done outside of the JDK. That's a community contribution. So I can't remember the person that developed it, but thankful for that person to taking the time to do that. What was it? Sorry. So also on everything in JDK 23. So all the JEPs you saw there, that's obviously the big features coming in JDK 23. But Thursday, I'll be doing a release notes video.
Awesome.
So you can see everything in 23.
Yes, and that's a really good point because this is really kind of high level stuff. And I remember going through JDK's, like it was either 21 or 22's release notes, and I go, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. So that's a really good thing to note. Go through the release notes, see what smaller changes there, but sometimes pretty cool features. So
I have a video coming out on our YouTube channel, so that way, because like that reading through the release notes, trust me, it's dry. So, but if you are doing laundry or something like that, you can just. I mean, if you're truly demented and just want to continue to hear my voice, but you can just, put in some AirPods, do laundry or do, making dinner, and you can kind of think like, oh, wait, okay, that update or that deprecation, that matters to my organization. And then I'll make a note of that and check the release notes.
Dinner in Java with Billy. Sign me up for that.
Exactly.
So a couple others I just want to quickly just talk about. We don't need to go into the weeds of this because we could spend a whole episode on this, but a couple that I've been kind of tracking for a while now, ever since JDK 21 was with Project Loom. The addition of virtual threads was a huge deal, especially in the Spring community, because of all the things, we're doing on the server, things that are getting, anything that's blocking. We kind of opened up this performance benefit for those types of applications with virtual threads. A couple of things that kind of been hanging around are structured concurrency and scoped values. I don't want to go into them. People can go read the JEPs. These are in their third preview. Do we know where these are? Are we coming to the end of this? Are these going to be final soon? What do you know about that?
When are we going to bring you back, Billy?
Yeah.
When are we going to bring you back?
Yeah, I'll be whenever you guys want to. I'll be plenty to talk about. So yeah, and this might be a good thing to actually talk about at a future live stream. But I will say for structured concurrency. So oftentimes you can kind of get a pretty good idea on when something's going to be finalized. If there's between two preview versions, it's like, oh, there's no changes that's coming in this. That's usually an indication that the following JDK version there's going to be finalized. Except there's always going to be those exceptions. And in this case, that's the case with structured concurrency. So between 22 and 23, if you looked at the JEPs, there was no changes between them. But that's actually because we are doing a pretty major API update and it just wasn't ready. So, and the way the JEP process goes, you would still have to re-preview it even if there's no changes. So that's a separate site. But so in 24, there's going to be a major API update to it.
Okay.
And I do have, I'll share it with you in our chat. And you can share it then and there, because I'm sure I can't share the URL in here or in the YouTube chat. But if you want to put that in there, I do have examples of what that code looks like. But yeah, there's going to be some major API updates to structured concurrency.
Cool.
Again, we want to hear feedback. We definitely want you kind of get there, test it out. Let us know if there's weird edge cases you're running into where things could be improved. So because that way we can help make sure that this is, as good as possible. hopefully we can get it in for 25.
Awesome.
But again,
which is right around the corner.
Yes, it's just right. I mean, it is.
It's
So
1 year.
like, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be quite possible. But
listen, nothing you say here in this show is binding. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, someone's going to cut this and then put this on the sword. And Billy
said.
And then I'm going to get any call.
If you do that out there, we will come after you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it's I am very much I think I'm very looking forward to structured concurrency when it is finalized.
Yeah, for sure.
Brian Getz, the chief language architect of Java, wrote a book, Java Concurrency in Practice.
Yeah.
And whenever structured concurrency finally is finalized, like that's going to be finally when that book is no longer it's going to be meaningfully out of date at that point.
we're gonna need another one. We're gonna have to talk to Brian to get another one. Cool. So I know we talked about a lot of features today. We're kind of running up on time here, but I guess overall, what are you excited about in JDK 23? What have you been looking forward to? I know you've been out talking about it for a while. What have you enjoyed talking about when it comes to JDK 23?
Yeah, JDK 23 is old news at this point. No, as far as maybe I guess one other thing we just haven't touched on too much yet, is the ZDC on the Z collector.
Mm-hmm.
So they back in JDK 21. They added a new mode, generational mode, to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have like a video. So I have a couple of videos where I kind of go deep into various JVM topics. And so if you want to watch a video, I do. It's actually in a G1 garbage collector where I go into what a generational garbage collector is. So check out that video. That as far as explaining what a generational garbage collector is, that's still relevant to what it is in GDC, though the underlying implementation of that is very different. So it's not like, don't look at that and be like, this is exactly how it runs, other than the overall principles. But anyways, we made that the default mode for GDC, or we, the JDK engineers, I'm just a pretty face. That's now the default mode. And we're going to be rapidly then deprecating and removing the single generational mode. But it's a great garbage collector for, again, a lot of Spring developers who are out here, which I know Spring is often used for writing web applications. It works really well for that case, because the primary goal with ZDC, or there's two primary is first, it's highly scalable. It can hold up to like 16 terabyte heaps. But the other thing that's particularly relevant, Wait
a minute. What? That I think I might have missed that whole part.
Terabyte, not gigabyte, terabyte.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Well, and I know
literally huge.
Billy is not out here just kind of marketing you folks, because I got to tell you, we had some friends of ours from Netflix at VMware Explorer, and they constantly talk about how they moved to JDK 20, and then they moved to JDK 21, or from 17 to 21. I don't know what the exact story was, but moving to that generational garbage collector, they saw a huge improvement, 20-25%. And Netflix runs things at scale that nobody does on this planet. So pretty cool to see.
They even put a nice article together on that.
Yes.
But what's relevant, particularly for a lot of other, because most people aren't Netflix scale or are using that big of heaps, is that the latency on it is sub-millisecond. Like it's kind of set within it to try to always keep it within under a millisecond. And oftentimes it's about 550 to 250 microseconds is the pause time for garbage collection.
Who were you talking to about the collector? Because you were like, isn't it like 1 millisecond? They go, that's conservative.
That's conservative. Yeah, that was Stefan Carlson, who's one of the actual engineers on it, which again is so nice when you can actually talk to the actual experts who are again, like Josh says, pushing the bits. But so it's sub-millisecond, and as also we were talking during that live stream, is like, let's say even if you're not microservicing all like Netflix is, where Netflix, like within their architecture, it's going to come into that gateway by Zool, and then fan out to like hundreds or dozens of other microservices. The vast majority of people aren't writing that.
Yeah.
But a lot of us are writing it to where we are making calls to other services, like, maybe 2 or 3 other service calls. But like, let's say if for the user, you make that request and you happen to make that request right when a garbage collection phase is happening for that first service. And then it calls to the other services and making a garbage collection phase. And each of those garbage collection phases, with G1, like that could, maybe a half a second or something like that. If for like an old garbage collection phase or something like that, which is again another story. But if you so happen to hit that 2 or 3 times, all of a sudden that request is taking like 2 seconds just to go through all that. And that's, by then the person's like refreshing because we expect immediate response.
Yes, absolutely.
So
that's awesome.
Definitely we're checking out for sure.
So you so you have a video on that. Go check that out. Looking forward to your video later this week. What is that? Thursday, you said?
Thursday. Yep.
Thursday. All right. I can't wait to watch that on all the release notes. Go ahead, DaShaun.
Dan. He says, DaShaun, can your Raspberry Pi handle 16 terabyte heaps? I'm thinking, no. I don't think so. I don't think so. Not in any way, shape, or form. Man, 16.
The idea of like hacking that together, though, you have like the little Raspberry Pi and this massive rack of memory just attached to it.
That would be fun. DaShaun loves all things Raspberry Pis. We know that.
Yes.
He's a fan.
I was thinking, like, even with like tiered memory, I have, I think, 2 terabyte NVMe drives. And even then, even if I was able to use that as tiered memory, like, still no.
Yeah.
Nope. It's crazy. Thank you so much for all of these amazing things.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
And I think
time.
One of the things that was kind of pointed out on the stream today, and things that we've talked about today too, is there are new features, there are preview features. As 23 is now, we're on to 24. There are preview features there. Please, if you can, whether it's on a local machine, if it's within your company, if you're interested in some of these new features that are in preview or that are going to be in preview in 24, go give them take them for a ride, take them for a spin, and provide feedback.
Yeah,
I mean that's how these things get improved and turned around and get released is feedback from the community. So go check them out.
Absolutely.
Billy, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you so much for everything you do for the community. We are lucky to have you. Thanks for stopping by here today. Where can people find you for all these videos, these great videos and articles that you do?
Yeah. You can find me on our YouTube channel, which you posted earlier. YouTube /Java. We also have dev.java, where we have a lot of tutorials and stuff like that. I won't get into that, so I'll just mention it. And then also finally, inside.java, which is also an area where we'll aggregate all of our articles, and all of our JDK engineers, we post articles from them as well. So you'll hear from the really smart people, not just like me just like reinterpreting what they're saying.
We could seriously talk forever, Billy. Thank you so much. We're gonna, like DaShaun said, we're gonna have to have you back on. We'll pick a subject that we can go a little bit deeper in, but thanks again for everything.
Absolutely.
And thank you for everything you do for the community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, everyone, have a great one. Happy JDK 23 day.
Java 23, install it now.